This is Joe Rosemerick, and today we're going to talk about modifying plastic baits when you're dealing with heavily pressured waters. If you live in a major metropolitan area and there's a lot of fishermen, a lot of fishing pressure, or if you live in a place where there's not a lot of lakes, not a lot of rivers, and everyone that does fish goes to the same place, the fish there are going to have seen your bait. They have seen this exact worm. They have seen the creature bait that you have. So one thing you can do to help when you're fishing these heavily pressured lakes is perform modifications on your plastics. Do something so they look a little bit different or they give a little bit different action. The three ways that I most frequently see that happen are applying some sort of scent, either commercially available, soaking things in garlic, things like that, soaking things in salt, so that, hey, this looks like a worm, but it doesn't smell like that same worm that my buddy fish ate last week. Another thing you can do is when you have this rigged up, put a small nail into the tail or into the middle of the worm so that when it sits in the water, it doesn't sit the exact same way that the worm before it did. See here, your hang level. That one there, your tail hangs a little bit lower. It looks just a little bit different, and if you go and you put a little action with that, you can see some actual results. Another thing that I do personally, I do this all the time, is I take my straight worms and I give them legs. You see this little hook keeper on the top side of the plastic? Starting right there with the pocket knife, cut a vertical line down the tail of these so that you have two legs, and then cut that again to give it four. Now, being that not a lot of people do this, you'll find that the fish haven't seen this before, and if you do a little twitching action with your rod during your retrieve, these legs will kick. And it kind of gets you somewhere between a worm and a creature bait, somewhere between a worm and a frog, and it gives you a different look when you're fishing those heavily pressured waters. Now, if I'm doing just a straight jig head, I just do one side of these. If I'm doing a wacky rig, which I typically do on a drop shot, I do what I call a spider rig, where I do the exact same thing I just did on the last worm, except I shorten it up and I do it on both sides. So I have two four-legged, ends on each side of my wacky rig, and it looks like a goofy spider when it's hanging there in the water. So just one of those things that, you don't have to do the exact same thing, but look at ways to make your bait look a little bit different, and if not, get fish aggressive, get them curious, get them annoyed, do something to get them in the boat or on the shore. And right here, we have that spider rig. And that way, it's not a tube. It's got way more bulk than that, and it gives you some other look than your commercially available plastics.